The absolutely most dangerous lie that society has drilled into our brains, and I'm guilty of following this for way, way, way too many years, is the simple one thing of taking the safe route is the best route and it will get you exactly where you want to be and you will be happy. For me, I did the traditional path. I got good grades, got into the number one engineering school in the world, and afterwards working at Fortune 500, hundreds, Fortune 50s, and rubbing shoulders with all of the big wigs, whether you call it the C-suite, politicians, celebrities, powerful people. And the truth is, I wouldn't have achieved the extra level of that which I just described by taking the safe route. There was definitely part one of following the path, but I'm seeing colleagues around me, peers, my actual friends, whether you call it layoffs, whether you call it, hey, you don't have a job until the unforeseeable future. I'm talking about people that have been maybe laid off for 2 years, almost coming up on 3, which is at that point, it's like, are you even a part of that career, that path from a traditional sense? So the system is such where, hey, if you take this path of no risk, then you're going to get what you want. But today, things have changed. The world is not the same world that maybe I was being raised in maybe 10 years, 15 years ago. Maybe you're younger than me, maybe you're older than me, maybe we're the same age, right? But you can see the ebbs and the flows. And the truth is, in my life, for me, I looked at college as what? Okay, you get the degree, and degree equals paycheck, paycheck equals money, money equals, well, how much money, and what is my quote-unquote rich life, or my target, or what am I trying to do with said money, right? And what I didn't know, the safe path, which this point may be controversial, but to me, if you're gonna get 6 figures out of college, or after a master's, or with some work experience, or whenever, right? It's touted as, wow, 6 figures is so much. And it is a lot, but it's all relative. And it's probably a lot to who? It's going to definitely be a lot to the minimum wage worker who maybe is earning $7, $10 an hour, depending on what state you live in. And so if there's 40 hours in a week, right, traditionally from a 9 to 5 perspective, then 40 hours times, 4 weeks is 160 hours, and times 12, you roughly get around 2,000 hours of work in a year. So in other words, 50 weeks times 40 hours is roughly that math. So if you're working at $7 an hour, that's $14K a year. If you're at $10 an hour, that's $20,000 a year, right? So if you want 100K, then that's basically $50 an hour. And I get it, right? If you try to have a trade and sell your labor, maybe you're billing at 175 an hour, but you're not able to maybe get 175 times 40 consistent hours in a week times 50 weeks. The reason that amount is typically higher is because, hey, it's also understood that this doesn't happen every day, but when it does, you need to sort that out. And so the cost for that skill, it could be as simple as, hey, you just needed to turn something this way. You're not paying for necessarily the work or the hours of work, depending on the situation. You're paying for the skill. So coming back all the way to the beginning, right? I basically was always very entrepreneurial. I always wanted to do that which was just kind of out there, but it never, from a young age, even before corporate, I'm sure you can probably relate with this. If you're playing, you're having fun, you're playing with your toys or something like this, it's not like you think like, okay, I'm going to spend 40 years in a cubicle and that kind of traditional mindset, or 40 years in a factory from back in the day. So there's no two ways around it. If today you basically follow this path, there's nothing there, so what's next? What's next is I'll share what happened in my life from a step-by-step personal perspective to give kind of insight on how things went, what I did. And you don't need to feel like, wow, this person started so early, because it's not about the time. It's about other things that come along the way. So when I was, you could say, yay big, right? Like short, small, like a kid, right? I don't know where it came from, and there's probably more, soul searching I can do to give you the best reason of why. But it was always about, hey, if I want to spend time with someone, but that person is going to work their job, especially as a kid, you don't know like all the semantics and how the society at large just works. It's kind of like, hey, how can I buy my, let's say, parents' time, right, in this case, to spend more time with me? And it seemed like they're leaving me, but they're leaving me for this thing called money. And so money wasn't evil or not. It was just, hey, they had to do what they had to do, because the understanding was money takes care of everything that's needed, whether bills, food, entertainment, whatever. So I used to look at money like, okay, so money is this thing that if I have it, I can basically free up people's time to do whatever they want with me. Now, selfishly, it may be like, hey, so they can spend time with me, but I didn't realize those two were connected at the time. Now that we're older, it's like it goes back to kind of the slave mentality of, oh, you can use money to control people's time. Oh, isn't that kind of sounding similar to something how the world works today, right? So it's not in that light, it's just what it was. So, risk wise, what can you do or what should you do to earn money? So for me, before you are, 16 years old in America, depending on the state, or 18 and etc., you can't really earn money legally per se, or like get a job. And I would be like, okay, well, how do you make money, right? So then we're talking about maybe selling, lemonade, right, as a youngster, or hey, trading cards, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, like kind of selling, or seeing, oh, if this is worth this much, like it's kind of like, oh, there's arbitrage because this person over here, there's no actual, let's just say, dark magicians of a certain type. That's a card name. And so let's say they're willing to pay this much more. Maybe they live 10 miles out. And as a kid, 10 miles is like a whole thing, right? Like you need your, hey, mom, can you drop me over there or get there somehow on the bus or whatever, right? So that's more like the, you could say side hustles of a young age of just kind of going with the flow of trying to like flip things for a little extra cash, little extra cash. And little did I know that that's basically like trading, right? Just like buying something and selling something. It's just how the world works, right? That's at the fundamental basis. So it's always been like kind of in more corporate terms, right? I've always been customer facing, sales centered focus, like all of these things, like I'm there to make the sale. In other words, I'm getting the deal flow, I'm managing inventory, which in the real world is basically the guy who has all the contracts, right, for the work coming in. The reason why someone has a job is, hey, there's an understood, defined process of getting something done, some work done, and that work, the process to get it done is repeatable. And so now we're talking about, oh, this repeatable process, we can automate it without any other humans, and we can make it, if it's on the computer, it's all happy-go-lucky, and that's great, right? That's how it is today. So the point of a job, right, is nothing but it's an operational role to do some job or some level of effort, some work, whatever, right? But you're not the person, typically speaking. Your job is usually not to sell, unless if it's a sales job. Your job may be to fulfill the demand. In other words, oh, this customer ordered something. Let's make sure it gets to them on time. Oh, this customer has our product, whether it's a software tool or oh, it's a physical project or product, and it's working or not working. And what are we doing? Oh, we're customer success. We're making sure like the customer is successful in that which they're doing, so they're a repeat customer. They come again. So it all comes down to doing something to sustain the deal flow, to maintain it, or maintain happy customers, or look for the next thing. But that first origination point, it all comes down to me, in this case, if I was the owner, who do I know? Who did I convince, or who did I persuade, or who did I just match, right? The value gap of, hey, you need some value, you're looking for a gap to be filled of something that you're trying to like understand what is the solution, and I come with you with the solution, right? It could be anything, right? It could be like as simple as when you don't know how to plan your day, it could be a calendar that's automated that links all your other apps and all these other scheduling services into one super calendar, right? Or before the calendar was invented on the phone, it had to become somewhere like an app, like a calendar thing, and that was programmed, like hard-coded at some point, and then it was scaled through everyone having their iPhone or a mobile device, etc., etc. So all of that to say, risk has to be taken, because risk is not a bad word. Risk is not dirty. It is not negative. Risk is just exactly how it sounds. It is literally a calculation slash quantification of, you could call it probability, right? The probability success of you being, perfect or getting 100%, right? In a test, they say, in a test in terms of academics, they say that, hey, the more you keep studying doesn't guarantee that you're going to get 100% ever. But the probability likelihood that you're going to get 100% only goes up higher, all else equal. And in life, if you just follow the safe path, there's no guarantee that you're going to get anywhere. In other words, it's come to the point where since there is no safety, it's actually riskier slash the riskiest to follow a path that was once safe, that is now crumbled, and people still think maybe it's safe, it's going to be safe, it's going to come back to the way it was, it's going to, no, like it could, but that's the risk. The risk is you waiting for that safe path to still be tried and proven, to still be the way, the source, the way you get out of whatever. Like, no, the truth is this. Risk is informed to everybody as don't do it. But what is risk? It's basically saying this is the path that's safe. But when this is not the case, you have to take other actions. So for me, I've always known, like, hey, in college, example, right? Okay, I'm getting this degree. This degree is for the job. And if I'm not getting a master's, right, then my GPA doesn't really matter. So that means that I don't really need to get, let's say, a 4.0 or a 3.85, whatever. And if I'm trying to be a lawyer taking the LSATs and trying to hit a 180 or whatever the scoring mechanism is for that, right? And then there's a GRE, the GMAT, there's all these things, right? But if you know, like, hey, if that's not the path, the risk is, hey, I'm not taking that path, but I'm trying to do something else. So for me, whether it's Bitcoin from the initial days or learning how to trade stocks during college, because I honestly identify more as a finance major slash financial, everything individual. Like this is the second channel, and the main channels are more personal finance, and all these things. So I got an engineering degree, which is great because in the marketplace at the time, it worked out. I got a job and all the things, right? And that job allowed me to get cash flow to invest into real estate or buy crypto or buy stocks and do more and do more and do more. But it's also about the other part of how do you manage your money, how do you just not blow it and all these things. But for me, I was like, hey, I'm getting this amount, right? And it was like, cool. But if you ask me, hey, can you buy this $3 million house cash? Or can you buy this $3 million Bugatti ever? And the truth is, even if you're earning 100K for 30 years, that's 3 million net. In other words, gross amount. And so the net after that, after taxes, could be whatever that number is. And that's assuming you save everything and Bugatti's prices don't go up in the longer term, right, for you to buy it. So I realized that it's not about me wanting all the shiny things, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Prada, Bulgari, Dolce Gabbana, all these guys. No, it's, hey, I want anything that I want whenever, and I say within reason, meaning I never even want to own a private jet or lease it or have it, whatever. But if I can afford it, yeah, maybe we have it for a year, maybe try it out, maybe it's worth it, maybe it's not, whatever, right? But that's part of that experience, because after you experience a lot of products, whether they're in your ownership or you lease them, you realize, wait, if I've met all the most powerful people in the world, I've been in the fanciest hotels, first class, this and that, I've, been in the fanciest, schmanciest, whatever, right? It's not even a bad thing to be in them. It's like, if you've seen it all, whatever that means to you, right? If you travel across the world, you realize, like, what do you really want? Yeah, the grass is maybe greener in Ireland or Greenland, or maybe the ice is colder in Antarctica or whatever, right? Like you realize these things and that's awesome, right? But what is the cost to realize and experience these things versus how much better could it be if you set yourself up, you see a little trailers before the movie when you're younger, and then you realize, hey, I can live this lifestyle forever. So in other words, without taking risk, you can never have the second half of that life. And risk is baked into the stock market. Risk is baked in to investments. So the idea of society is basically telling you, hey, don't take risk, but go earn this safe paycheck. In other words, collect this cash, go put it into something that is basically, there is inherent risk, and you could lose something. Where a lot of people during the recession of 2008, their portfolios, let's say retirement fund, they collapsed, boom, 30% down. And now they're like, oh, I'm forced to retire and I lost this much. And yeah, like the thing is, what you can't survive to not start cashing out or withdraw, because that's just the unfortunate timing. And there's a better way to set up your life instead of waiting for that final 65-year-old moment when you're retired and then everything is great. So no, like I cannot see that being the case. I'm working out in the future based on today's world, and it's not like it was ever going to work for a lot of people after a certain time frame, because everything is good and great until it isn't. So taking risk is inherent. And if I didn't take the risk of understanding and learning about different asset classes, industries, how things really work in the world, and realizing and understanding where do I want to be, where do you potentially want to be, and what is the path to get there? Because the riskiest kind of outcomes, in other words, the outcomes of being maybe an actor, a celebrity, a dancer, a model, all these things we say, wow, it's so risky, the chance is so unlikely. And in other words, what are people looking at? They're saying, hey, can you get a stable paycheck? Hey, are you going to be okay if you have an emergency? Hey, do we need to support you, at some point in the future, unbeknownst to us, because maybe your career, you're happy, but you're paycheck to paycheck, but you're not really able to save. So like all these things, it's all about, you could say society looking out for you, but the truth is it's for yourself to understand where do you fit, whether it's in society or what are you happy with. And if I didn't take, let's say, that extra risk of, hey, I didn't plan myself to be, well versed for, a master's, whether that's in the sciences, whether that's an MBA, right? Whether whatever, right? I said, all right, whatever happens here, I'm gonna make it happen. And if I didn't say that to myself, that was part one. Then part two is actually doing something, next, and then seeing how that goes and iterating and figuring it out. And I got a lot of trials that I got to go through, a lot of failures, and a lot of, okay, this is actually great, and then more failures, and then this is amazing. And like seeing the ebbs and flow of the reality, I'm able to say now, like, okay, you bludgeon me with some, unfortunate news, or you say, hey, your stock market portfolio, hey, just dropped like 15% today because the market's crashed. Like, it doesn't phase me. Yeah, it may suck for a second, or like what actually is happening and how do we play it? How do we make more money? You can see it in my face. It's like, it's exciting because now you have more input for a potentially new output. But with the safe route, it's kind of like the inputs are all the same for apparently an outcome or output that's apparently all the same. But when that thing of, hey, put in one thing into the machine and one thing comes out, those days of quote unquote the conveyor belt of, hey, go to school, get a degree, and woo, you have a job and you have everything safe forever, like those days are not here anymore. So lo and behold, the most dangerous lie in society is to believe this. And this last part is sponsored by me, where without me taking risk in life, I wouldn't be able to even say the next words that I'm about to. So there is an opportunity to invest. There's a project, a real estate commercial project. Construction has started. Investments are on 15K to 3 mil USD, depending on where you're watching from. The perspective is it is a 250 room hotel. Now, in my personal life, the stock market, crypto, real estate's a bread and butter. Now, after a lot of practice, you could say, which is a fancy way of saying like, okay, you saw a lot of failures, ups, downs, and all these things with, personal capital. I'm now comfortable and confident to say that, hey, this project is more than 50% backed by me. And so basically this is an opportunity to say, hey, you want your name on actual land and property, and you have cash flows that are repeating month over month. This is an opportunity for you to say, okay, I want to diversify my portfolio. I want to understand more. Maybe I just want to know more about the project. I don't even want to invest. Maybe I'm planning to do it on my own, right? That's great. But if you ever wanted to buy a Marriott, Wyndham, IHG, Hilton, all these type of hotels, it's not possible. So this is me bringing the deal to the market. And the way you can get monthly cash flow even before this hotel is built is because the super headline is that, hey, instead of me going to the bank and borrowing, paying them interest, I'm happy to basically fund capital in this way as well, where it's a win-win relationship because it's not about today's investment or this project, it's about decades out and what is the bigger picture. So all of that said, if you came this far, thanks for coming to the end. Check out this video, leave over here. And with that, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.